Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and today we gotta talk about something pretty scary for the creators out there watching. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're looking into Omnia Media. Now, of course, before we begin, I want to start off with bringing people a little bit back to the past. You remember things like multi-channel networks, YouTube MCNs? Well, that's where the focus of today's video is going to be at. To give you a little primer, a few months ago, just shortly before the beginning of this year, I was basically keyed in from a few insiders about a possible bankruptcy on one of the largest companies in the YouTube MCN space, Omnia Media, who have basically, as they've stated, cemented themselves as the #1 gaming content network, globally representing 500 talent, collectively driving 3 billion views a month, with unmatched engagement. We are talking big creators like The Sidemen, big groups rather, The Misfits, XQC, Cold Ones. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, to understand, this is a pretty big organization. A ton of creators, ton of people that you watch are part of this organization, or at least used to be. And a few of them have actually gone out publicly and said they're not being paid on time. Now, obviously, I wasn't the only person looking into this. There were other creators in the space who look at financial kerfuffles. Someone who is a friend of the channel and good friend, CoffeeZilla, who actually ended up reaching out, and this is an email that was shared here, where he asks, I'm an investigative journalist looking into Omnia's late payouts, which is the rumblings we heard of, which is where the bankruptcy, I guess you could say rumblings had come out of. Now, of course, support at Omnia had responded, Omnia intends to honor all contractual requirements with its creators as it's done over its 10-year history as a CSP. For all of our creators' December AdSense revenue, we can confirm that either payments have been made within such creators' contractual terms, or where there has been a delay impacting a small number of creators due to a variety of recent administrative and operational changes within the business. Any applicable payments, delinquencies, are expected to be resolved within the permitted cure period set out in each of the contracts. So again, when Coffee had asked about the possible bankruptcy allegations that have been brought against Omnia, they had said, with respect to your second and third questions, we'd like to direct you to Enthusiast Gaming's recently filed financial statements for the year end December 31st, 2023, where information on lending arrangements had been publicly disclosed, and they had mentioned things like selling off non-profitable casual gaming assets for $4 million, and respectfully, each of these should provide comfort to bankruptcy concern. Now, this was back in January, and we're talking about this in April now because we had held off on the story because we didn't know if this was going to be some huge, massive deal. If people weren't going to get paid, yeah, we would have covered it sooner. But in this case, people had been getting paid. There were creators that had received their payouts. And it was kind of scummy because in some cases it was literally until the last possible day, which honestly just keeps adding to the pressure and stress that creators are going through because they're just trying to get the money that is owed to them, right? Because they believe, hey, I'm getting this split, it's a 110 split, it should just be going from YouTube to them to me. And now we're sitting here at the end of April talking about it because to this day, there are creators that haven't been paid, and now they're finally coming out as of a day ago. Unfortunately, a few creators have come out publicly as of a day ago talking about this situation. A creator known as Alex Emsley, who said, for the last 7 months, I have been held hostage by We Are Enthusiasts, Luminosity, and Omnia Media financially as they've been delaying all my payments months later to what we originally agreed on. My December payment was delayed and then delayed again, and I am still yet to receive an email about whether I will see the tens of thousands of pounds they are holding from me. This has affected me and my work considerably, and the stress this has put me under has made me sick. It's also incredibly unfair on the people I employ who I've had to pay out of my own savings. Please send me the December and January money you were meant to pay me on March 15th and April 15th, or I will have to take it further. And again, this wasn't just the only creator. You had another creator known as Chris Raygun who quoted that and said, if anyone's been wondering where the main channel videos have been, all I'll say is this, Alex and I are part of the same network. His concerns here are my concerns as well, and it's incredibly frustrating. Leon Lush, whose podcast I've been on very recently, great guy, said, same thing happened to me. Been a stressful 6 months. Whatever suits run that godforsaken piece of shit snake fuck company can rot in hell, and anyone considering being involved in anything they touch should probably reconsider. So pretty scathing mentions over here. And again, it didn't just stop there. Unfortunately, it seems as if Omnia Media decided to, in a sly way, threaten the creators who were talking about this situation.
Now, this is where a red flag really occurred. Any creator that would come out publicly and speak would, based on the conversations and messages and emails that I've been sent, would receive, a ping by a support member that would say, hey, look, your check's in the mail, but remember, there is confidentiality obligations under the MCN agreement. And that, remember, you don't want to breach your relationship with Omnia, you want to make sure you have consent talking about stuff, yada, yada, yada. Enthusiast Gaming is a publicly traded company, and they wouldn't want you to make any statements that could have unintended harm. And they would recommend removing posts that would contain types of material misrepresentations. Which, the thing about it is, it's so scummy to threaten somebody legally, by suing them with money that you probably should just pay them with, instead of dragging the situation out more than it has to be. It's just a red flag after another red flag. And it's wild because the only time these creators would ever get any responses to their emails or Discord pings is if they decide to publicly trash this company, which, again, in my opinion, I think they really have the right to do if they are owed money and they're not receiving it after being told that they're going to receive it on certain dates.
Now again, to give you an idea, before we dive into it, MCNs, which are multi-channel networks, right, according to YouTube, are third-party service providers that affiliate with multiple YouTube channels to offer services that may include audience development, content programming, creator collaborations, digital rights management, monetization, and/or sales. All channels that are a part of an MCN must also have their channel reviewed and follow YouTube's monetization policies. Now, MCNs are kind of a relic of the older days where YouTube monetization and partnerships weren't as, freely accessible. When you first started out, early days of YouTube, you kind of had to partner up with an MCN to gain access to a lot of extended YouTube tools that wouldn't be generally available to the public. Nowadays, an MCN is really only sought after by, streamers or people where YouTube is mostly a secondary or tertiary platform in their enterprise if they want to attain things like Content ID or copyright claiming tools or have these people manage their channels for them. If you are a YouTuber who does YouTube content, it is actually not beneficial for you to really be in an MCN unless they provide some serious boon that nobody else can. So in this situation, a lot of the creators that are with an MCN right now are actually people that have probably been with said MCN for years upon years. Now, trying to join an MCN is actually quite easy, okay? You talk to a few people, you sign a paperwork, and your channel gets connected. Trying to leave an MCN is like fucking trying to navigate the 7th layer of the DMV, also known as hell, because trying to get out of your contract is not as simple as anybody would say. According to YouTube, removing MCN access is apparently as simple as going to remove MCN access from your channel by going to the dashboard, going to the channel dashboard, going to the network relation, and removing access. The problem with this situation is the MCN pretty much has 30 days to respond to your request, or that access will automatically be removed. Now, even if this option is present, because of the contract certain creators sign, it may not be necessarily easy for them to leave that MCN, unless, of course, somebody from there gets off their ass and removes and delinks a channel. But in general cases, at least my experiences with other creators, that has been the exception rather than the norm, unfortunately. Now, the MCN business is a bit shaky to begin with. For instance, the thing about MCN contracts, for anybody that doesn't know, is if you're a top-tier YouTuber in the high bracket, your contracts are what they typically call 100 zeros. 100 zero basically means that the MCN takes 100% of your YouTube AdSense earnings, but then gives 100% of that right back to you. And for most larger YouTubers, they get the 100 zero rate. But of course, the smaller your channel is or the less pull you have, you get other, rates like 90/10s, or in some cases it can be 80/20s and maybe even lower. That's money that is separated and given to you as a majority percentage in usual cases, and then the rest, 10, 20%, whatever, goes to the MCN. Unfortunately, for a lot of these companies, their revenue is super high. So in some cases, when studios, large production companies, end up buying these people out, they find out when they open the financials, oh shit, they have $600 million of revenue, but there's like only a couple $1,000,000 that we actually have. They just keep giving it away. It's like a place where money just moves through, and that's pretty much all that it is. And unfortunately, in some cases, according to employees from Maker Studios, they ended up coming out and talking about how bad this situation can end up being financially. For instance, in the epitome of the colossal failure of the MCN business, this is from DigiDay, one former Maker employee said every all-hands meeting was let off with a number of views we were doing, 10 billion, 11 billion, 12 billion views. That was the outward-facing success story, but the reason the views were growing was because the network kept growing and we were just adding more and more channels. Like other YouTube networks, Maker would sign social media stars by offering them upfront guarantees, even if these stars were on revenue-starved platforms like Vine. We were signing these top Viners to mid-six-figure minimum guarantees, said another former Maker exec. By the time I left, there were still tens of millions of dollars of minimum guarantee payments that we hadn't made.
So again, the business model here kind of relied on basically scaling up by just adding more YouTubers to your roster. So you could have people like PewDiePie as one person, and then you could have like 1,000 smaller creators. But as long as you keep adding up, showing, investors that you have hundreds of millions of followers and that hundreds of millions of dollars flowing through your company that you count as revenue, in the hopes that a larger production company like Disney or a larger studio like Warner, whatever, big companies throw an offer and purchase you, thinking that, wow, this might be one really massive online media venture. But then when you open the books, you just see that money is flowing through. It's not as if even the rights for that content in most cases, or the YouTubers, belongs to these studios either. They don't have the intellectual property rights. They literally only exist by skimming the money that they legally can through a split that isn't 800-0, or maybe through an ad sale that they make. It's very easy once you get past the smoke and mirrors to realize that this isn't, the land of milk and honey as one would be led to believe.
But again, whittling this all back to Omnia Media, the situation we wanted to look into that we've been looking at for the last few months, and this is me looking into it and as well as CoffeeZilla, where again, we were looking into their interactions with a bunch of the creators involved. Now again, Leon Lush, Alex Emsley, Chris, Raygun are just 3 creators out of a whole bunch that have come out. Thaf9 made an entire video when he got completely fed up with the fact that Omnia Media wasn't reaching out and paying him what he was owed, to the point where literally these guys will respond the moment you actually put any form of public pressure on them. But as long as you're completely quiet, it seems like everyone is just basically getting jerked around. So I'm going to show you a series of emails to bring up the stress that a lot of these creators have been going through. Now, stress is an important part of this, right? The reality is, for some YouTube groups, and I'm not talking about me because I'm pretty much a one-man show for the most part, I don't have to worry too much if my check gets delayed by a week or two, right? YouTube isn't even my primary job. But for people whose job it is to do YouTube videos and who have big enterprises and multiple people working under them, missing out on each payment can be seriously drastic. You might be able to survive one payment getting messed up, but when you get up to 2 and 3 and 4, taking out loans, dipping from your savings becomes an era of stress where you literally are losing years of your life because of the constant wonder if your money is ever even going to come in. These are people wondering if they'll even get to pay off their, a payment on their house or have food for groceries or things like that. Okay, when things start thinning out like this, it's not good.
And here's an example of them reaching out to their creators on the 3rd of January, even setting up dates.
I can set up your channels for release at the end of the month for a clean break. I will set the release for January 31st. Please let me know if this works for you. The remaining earnings from the time in our network will be paid out on the following timeline in alignment with your contract terms. November revenue is received in December. It is paid out within 45 days of the end of December. So they're doing like a net 45 exfiltration of the cash. And of course, this is what you have to basically read just to know that you're being removed from their MCN. You're basically at their beholding, okay? You're basically it's up to them. Now, when Alex made that tweet and he got that slide text about not talking about the situation, Alex basically responded back to these individuals and said, my old MCN is going to spend money suing me instead of paying me on time? That's hilarious. Pay me my money, man. I'm not even with Omnia anymore. It's disgraceful that I've had to follow up over 3 emails and even make tweets after leaving by the way. It's insane. And this is kind of the story that everyone's been having. If you haven't been making the tweets or the mentions, then they were basically apparently jerking around these creators by telling them payments just expected to go out April 17th, Wednesday. And while some creators ended up getting paid, a bunch of them that we talked to ended up not getting paid. And that is an issue right there. It really seems like these people will just string you along until they find out, oh shit, they're actually going to go public and live. Then we got to actually start slyly threatening them with potential lawsuits, potential legal actions, instead of, doing the right thing and paying them what they're owed. And even inside their group chat organization where you can actually read and talk to, again, a lot of the stuff did also happen over Discord for quicker communication, and a bunch of creators who were part of this were just talking about getting their money back. So again, step into our shoes and you'll see the shit show that is unraveling you won't understand. Families on the line here, man. Families with newborns. And of course, even creators got mad to the point where they said, sending in an email is just absurd, told my team they should expect to receive pay today, and nothing clear. Absolutely unreal, man. The nonstop delays and non-calcified answers are causing havoc on my team's end, and they're getting to the precipice. This needs to be addressed, man. We need to call, we need to talk, we need a date. I need to assure my team by X date tomorrow or day after payment will clear, and that is it. I think one of my favorite letters that we've gotten out of this was from Leon Lush, who wrote, "Brother, the window for niceties has long since closed. I could write a 3-page email about the incredible malfeasance and spineless handling of this current situation that has transpired over the last 6 months. But I'll spare you because I know you are well aware. All the while publicly expanding luminosity. Fucking laughable and frankly insulting to the many creators and businesses whose money you are holding hostage. And I'm sure you are well aware most of us are communicating with another, each of us with our own incentive to ensure we get what is ours. I've been lobbying to let you do the right thing, which you have barely done for the past 6 months, but I've personally reached my limit. Don't talk to me about some bullshit cure period. I don't give a fuck about some byline that is on page 47 of a contract drafted a decade ago. Just be a human and do the right thing. Families, businesses, creators, all losing sleep while you sit there holding their money going about your business like luminosity is growing. Egregious. You are on the precipice of an absolute PR shitstorm. Some of the largest channels that cover scams, financial fraud are already reaching out and looking for people to go on record as they build their videos about the situation. I know you are already legally bullied into taking down his tweet, but that's honestly a pathetic preview of what is currently brewing. I say this not as a threat, but as a businessman. You need to pay the people you owe money to. Most of them are on the edge and only scared to go on record because they desperately want and need the money that is theirs to be paid. All you have to do is this: give us a date, tell us when we will be paid, and then pay us. No more waffling, no more canned PR chat GPT lawyer generated bullshit. Grow a spine, stop holding money hostage. I would appreciate an exact date when I can expect my money so I can tell my lawyer to fuck off and focus on my business instead of dealing with a squad of fucking monkeys holding my money while publicly gloating about their business expansion. So yeah, Leon wasn't exactly too excited. And if you see me blurring out a name, it's not necessarily because I don't have certain people on record. It's just because some emails and some discussions I'd rather keep as anonymous as I can, just for the safety of people out there, because for some creators who are still in their network and have still not been paid, I really don't want to add to the extra delay. But we're at a point where everyone is just okay with going live because they just want this whole nightmare to end. So yeah, it really seems like Omnia has basically been jerking around a whole bunch of creators right now, while at the same time, if you go to their actual website, ladies and gentlemen, they are apparently expanding in certain regions. They proudly boast that they have over 50 websites, 700 YouTube channels, 11 TikTok channels, 12 esports rosters, 500 content creators, and a top 100 ComScore property. Okay, that's brilliant, okay? But ladies and gentlemen, their latest news from April 17th and April 11th shows that they are partnering with Amazon on Rocket League Invitational tournaments, and as well as Kroger to launch the Luminosity Invitational presented by Kroger Gaming. Did not know Kroger Gaming was a thing, but it's wild to see such expansions when at the same time it appears that there is plenty of creators that still need to be paid out of money. You can't be flexing your business, but at the same time it appears that your business isn't exactly fruitful for the contractors that you have under you.
Now, when we were introduced to the story of Enthusiast Gaming, we were brought in with rumors of possible bankruptcies. Now, while none of those rumors have been substantiated by any cold hard fact, there have been a couple telltale situations and incidents where we kind of don't have the best picture of health looking at their company. For instance, back in January 9, 2024, Nick Bryan, former CEO of Enthusiast Gaming, resigned, and Adrian Montgomery, as far as I know to this day, is still the interim CEO. Now, when when Enthusiast Gaming was inquired, they told Coffee that this was a situation where this person was let go for personal reasons that had nothing to do with the company, which again, it's there is no hard proof one way or the other, but usually when a CEO leaves like this, it's not entirely a great signal, so to speak. The other situation was in February 2024, they had filed the Form 15 to voluntarily deregister and suspend its SEC reporting obligations. So again, looking into exactly what had happened over here, I went to the NASDAQ website when this paints an even more clearer picture, where it says the company estimates that it incurs over $2 million of annual costs in connections with maintaining a dual listing. So right now, they are still listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, but the NASDAQ listing, that's not maintained anymore. So they said which expenses are expected to increase significantly in future years due to increase in compliance and other regulatory requirements. With the shares concurrently trading on the TSX, the company believes the relatively high insurance, listing, reporting, legal, and compliance costs that are associated with a continued United States Stock Exchange listing, as well as the administrative burdens and requirements associated with maintaining a listing, are just not justified at this time. So they don't think that the idea of putting this on the NASDAQ is actually worth it for the company. It's just the cost is higher than they are willing to even pay. So they are voluntarily deregistering themselves from the NASDAQ. So clearly it doesn't seem like, the money situation is there to support this dual listing. So that is the clearer explanation from the NASDAQ. Now, at this moment in time, Enthusiast basically redirected anybody investigating to go to their financials, which you can go right to their main website, go to the investors section, and then go to financials. And once you're at this page, scroll down and you can get a full quarterly view of their financial statements, all the way back into 2018 even. We're more interested in 2023, so we're going to go to 2023 Q4, click on that, and this is an independent auditor's report done by KPMG, all right? So this is, again, independent auditor. This is what they're providing. This is their numbers. I want to stress before going into this, however, I am not a financial expert. I am not somebody that has a licensed view or understanding of this kind of material, okay? And again, with a company that is willing to sue and be very litigious, if you talk about the situation, because remember, up until this point, it really seems like, they'll be nice to you, they'll be friendly, but obviously behind the scenes, it seems like some creators, they will mention the constant looming threat of legal action. So I just want to make sure that, I'm completely playing it safe over here. I don't want to say anything out of pocket. I am not an expert. I am not somebody here that is trained to give this information. I am, if anything, but an idiot, and my only background is understanding how computers work. This is, not my field of expertise. And again, I'm looking at their numbers, but I want to preface this by saying I am not an expert in any of this situation. That being said, let's look through some of the most important stuff in this entire 49-page audit. So the most important thing to look at here is, at least from my understanding, if you want to see how a company can operate and you want to see the health, whether it's ascending or declining, you can look at their year-to-year financials. So December 31st, 2022, 2 years ago at this point, or it's 2022, it's 2024 now, so less than 2 years ago, but they're looking at $7.4 million in cash, right? Actually, just, if you look at it, they've got $37.8 million in trade and other receivables. So money on the way, yada yada. But of course, the same time, December 31st, 2023, so a year later, the cash goes down, the trade and other receivables substantially drops as well. So then you look at their total assets, their liability then, okay? So the liability is important here too, because in the same time period, from December 31st, 2022, the accounts payable and accrued liabilities jumps from $32.8 million all the way to $47.1 million. So it doesn't seem to be going that great. Okay, their debt, their liabilities are going up, but the assets are dwindling down. Another important factor over here too is when you look at what their asset pool really is. So they value themselves on December 31st, 2022 at $341 million. So to somebody who's like looking in, they think, God damn, that's a pretty valuable company. But that number drops sharply to $236 million. Now, if you look at the lion chunk of these assets, right, you can see that they've got $180,000 worth of property that they lose over time to $124. But a lion chunk of their actual money is in Goodwill. So $171.6 million is in their Goodwill. That drops to $105 million, 105.8. So pretty big drop off. Then you've got intangible assets, which again drops from 116 to 85. So according to Goodwill, right, my understanding, and this is from BDC, right, Canadian company here, says Goodwill refers to the value a company gets from its brand, customer base, and reputation associated with its intellectual property. Goodwill is a long-term asset that generates value for a company over a number of years. Because they have no physical form, both patents and goodwill are also intangible assets as opposed to tangible stuff like land, buildings, and equipment. Because they deliver value over time, they are amortized on the income statement. So again, when you're talking about goodwill for a company, it can be pretty damaging to your goodwill when some of your creators, who are the forward, face of your brand, the people that you put on your website, are outright trashing you on social media. Now, of course, the goodwill is going down, and I can't imagine that number looks any better when they have to show their 2024 quarterly financials. It's just not going to look good. I'd be interested in seeing how Q1 looks for the investors watching. So the way they describe it too is goodwill is perceived to have an indefinite life as long as the company operates. If there is no impairment, goodwill can remain on a company's balance sheet indefinitely. But according to enthusiasts, they actually did have. So looking into goodwill and the actual impairment testing of it, again, according to this audit and the Investopedia definition that we saw, where goodwill is basically a value that you pay above fair market for a company. In this situation, they talk about, 7 cash generating units, right? And these 7 units are Enthusiast Properties, Luminosity, Omnia, Addicting Games, Outplayed, and so on and so forth, right? So these are CGUs. These are the cash generating units. And goodwill is tested for impairment on an annual basis at the end of the 4th quarter, or an interim date when triggering events would most likely not reduce the recoverable amount of a CGU below its carrying amount. So again, the value and the reassessment has caused, again, goodwill impairment to be significantly high in this situation as far as I'm able to read. Again, I am not an expert in any of this situation, so if anybody wants to jump in and discuss goodwill impairment, or the hit to their assets, the increase in liabilities, that is something that I would always love to have a discussion with. Again, this is something that I really do want an actual auditor or somebody with a finance background to really look through and see just what their perception on the health of this company would be. Now, when they talk about intangible assets, what's important to talk about is the numbers of what items they have tossed in. So when they talk about the intangible assets, okay, this is exactly what they're discussing here that is kind of propping this company up, the value. So for instance, $50 million, at least balances of January 1st, 2022, they had $50 million worth of domain names, apparently. They also had a multi-channel network license, which I assume is a YouTube MCN license, that was valued at $10.7 million. Now, going back to the balance sheet in this situation, if you look at the contract liabilities, which is what I assume the YouTubers or the people under their banner are, because these wouldn't be employees, these would be contractors, which is what YouTube MCNs typically would treat, anybody signing under them as, is valued at around $6 million. That is a liability that they have on them. Now, when I look at their cash and I look at the value of their goodwill and intangible assets, it seems to me personally that maybe the money, isn't all the way there, or it's being shifted around and they're still waiting on money they're waiting on a stable financial situation. Now, at this moment in time, I really don't think a company I don't think that YouTubers need to even worry about that. If you are owed money, it's not up to the company to get its shit together. It should have its shit together, period. So it seems like, obviously they'll pay as much as they can. People have been getting paid. And, I guess the hope is, as long as somebody doesn't make a stink, kind of keep delaying, pushing until the very, due deadline, until you have the money in your accounts to keep paying off creators. And that's kind of what it appears to be running in my head as this scenario is playing out. But it should kind of be a wake-up call for anybody who is considering joining an MCN or any of these organizations, is that if your lion's share of your money is being put into these people's hands, who are basically using it as a way to prop up their own revenue and make their business look bigger than it actually really is, then you are ultimately putting your YouTube livelihood, your business, even your company, because some YouTubers are running their own businesses underneath this. And you're basically putting your entire livelihood, your company, your legacy at stake if you are choosing to work with any MCN, right? Let alone enthusiast. The story that I see here is something that I've seen time and time again with various other MCN businesses out there. It really seems like, to me personally, this isn't a very sustainable business model, period. But yeah, the enthusiast gaming story is super duper wild, and it's super duper interesting to see how it goes on. And again, this whole financial look at their audit sheet wasn't something done by an expert. So I just want to stress that as much as I can. That also said, though, I really don't feel comfortable just seeing this go by. This has been probably one of the hardest things to see, because to be granted an inside view into anybody's personal life is a bit of a honor, and it's a bit of a respectful thing when somebody trusts you with a story like this. And I really want to say, for the creators that have allowed me insight, very much a thank you. And that's what's also made it stressful, because I've seen people have to personally get lawyers, get people involved, add so much stress to their life that it's at a situation where, guys, pay up, all right? And instead of threatening creators with possible litigation, use that money to just pay up, square the situation off, and then this whole story can be put to rest. Creators can walk away realizing that they're now severed from a predatory system, and this company can go off and hopefully get itself stabilized to a point where this kind of a story doesn't have to exist ever again. And I really do wish even the best for enthusiast gaming in the future with whatever endeavor they have. But in this situation, as it is right now, I think I think it's just time has gone well past a cure period or whatever. Creators need to be getting paid out, and I think honestly just, again, serves as a grim reminder as to never trust these companies. Maybe if you're a streamer, like I said, it's important for you to have access to certain key features. But in a grand majority of cases, we don't live in the year 2008, 2009, when having an MCN was nearly a requirement. Nowadays, the YouTube Partner Program and the feature sets that it provides you is nearly identical to whatever you would probably get with an MCN anyways. And unless you're an incredibly large creator with like an incredibly good backing or access to some really, really amazing experimental tools through an MCN license, it's just not worth it to go down this road. So again, don't put yourself through that stress and get yourself into a situation like this. Dealing with MCNs and dealing with YouTubers who are at their breaking points is one of the hardest things that I've done ever looking into an investigation like this. And honestly, it's not something I want to see dragged out for even more months. This should have been over in January. Unfortunately, it's April and we're here right now. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it, I am out.